Pura vida. I para Chema, here says faz like us guide you in the radi.
Cool. Would you mind introducing yourself to people who might not know you?
Sure. So my name is Fraser Maclean, originally from Scotland, and I moved to Mexico in 2019. So in January, I've been living in Latin America for 6 years. And the reason for my being invited to come and live and work and teach here in Mexico was my background in animation. And I wrote a book which came out in 2011, a long time ago, about animation layout, animation cinematography, scene planning. And most of my friends in Europe and America, they bought a copy of the book because it was like, oh, Fraser wrote a book and it's got nice pictures. But when I came to Pixelatl in 2017, one of the first people I met was Daniel Rojas from Costa Rica, and he saw that I had a copy of the book in my bag, and he went, oh, I own a copy of that book. And I went, I wrote that book. And what I discovered was that Daniel, and pretty much anybody else from Chile or Ecuador, anybody from Latin America who had bought a copy of the book, they'd actually read the text. And most of the people I knew, they looked through it and they thought it was nicely designed, but it never occurred to them to read it. And I found that was the thing. Like, here was people were using it a bit like a car manual, like it was if we want to make a movie or we want to make a series episode, what is it helpful to know about the design process, the relationship between the characters and the environments, and editorial continuity, those kinds of things. So I guess it's a little bit like, it's not so much that I'm some genius of animation, it's just that I carry with me a lot of information from people who were geniuses of animation in previous generations, because I got to meet and interview over 100 different people, some of whom were well into their 80s when I met them. So I had that last opportunity to capture the information of a lifetime's work, which they often felt had been overlooked or misunderstood because people were more interested in the character animation or in the directors or the story. So I kind of became this repository for everybody else's knowledge and experience and wisdom. So I get treated like I know more than I really do because I'm able to share advice that was shared with me in the context of the work that I did at Disney in London, at Disney in the States, the work that I did at Passion Pictures, the time I spent with Cambridge Animation Systems in the early years of digital animation toolkits. So I'm kind of the go-to guy for a bunch of stuff. And on the second level, if I don't know the answer to something, I usually know somebody who does.
Music seems to be an important part of your life.
Yeah.
What are the top 3 things that you listen to today?
All of them are live music here in Guadalajara. I grew up in a house full of music because my mother was a trained classical singer. She was a school teacher by profession, but she considered pursuing singing as a career. She was kind of nervous and anxious and not really good at being on stage, but she had an amazing voice, and she continued to train people in breathing for singing. My dad he just sat down and played stuff. So he wrote songs, and when they were students together, they met performing in the student shows they were in the northeast of Scotland. And I had 2 older brothers who both listened to music all the time. So I had my mom and dad's record collection, which was one of the things I really remember was they had an album of Carmen Jones, which was the African-American adaptation of Bizet's Carmen. And it had Dorothy Dandridge on the cover, and it had these amazing interpretations of that opera. My brothers were listening to David Bowie, Simon and Garfunkel, and I would sit there and I would look at the album sleeve art on the old 12-inch 33 1/3 records, and I would save up my pocket money, and the first 45 RPM I bought was an EP of songs from Jungle Book. And years later, I got to meet the Sherman Brothers, and I was able to say to the Sherman Brothers, the first record I bought with my own money was songs from the Jungle Book, which was just such a thrill. But I think I was lucky also because my father was a journalist, and every year in Edinburgh, where I grew up, there's an international arts festival, and he got free tickets to everything. So as a kid, without realizing the value of it, I got to see opera, ballet, I got to see Yehudi Menuhin playing Vivaldi, I got to hear Dame Janet Baker singing Così fan tutte, I got to see the Japanese Bunraku puppet theater, and we never had to pay for any of it. So my entire childhood was music. And of course, I grew up with kind of 3 levels of animation. So when we came home from school, they would have Top Cat or Don Gatto on BBC for all the school kids coming in. And that whole, Top Cat, the indisputable leader of the, and we would have music with the Flintstones. You'd have the theme song for the series. On a Tuesday evening, we had a BBC double bill of Tom and Jerry with all the Scott Bradley music. And Scott Bradley's music was a combination of his themes for Tom and Jerry, but also interpretations of Cab Calloway or Judy Garland, because as I found out later, they were all also signed to MGM, and MGM and Warner Brothers used to use their cartoons to exploit their music library. So I grew up with like Raymond Scott's Powerhouse, and I didn't even know what that music was, but I never really saw animation that did not have music associated with it. And I saw a lot of music, or I heard a lot of music that was connected to animated shows. And at Christmas and Easter holidays, we had a Disney special, and they would show 3 minutes of like Peter Pan and 3 minutes of Snow White, and then they would promote Robin Hood or The Rescuers or whatever Disney show was coming out. So I don't think I ever thought of music and animation as being separate. And when I went to work at Disney in the 1990s, I teamed up with 3 other Disney artists: Chris Jenkins, who was a guitar player and an effects animator, Tim Allen, who was a bass player and a character animator, and Dave Burgess, who worked on the Genie on Aladdin, helped design and animate the hyenas on Lion King, just an amazing drummer. And really, songs are stories. It's all about rhythm. It's all about character, expression, emotion. So I guess my 3 favorite things, or my three favorite types of music, are coming to the blues sessions on a Tuesday here in Cafe Breton, going to Escarabajo Scratch on a Saturday, going to Primer Piso, and everywhere I go I take my sketchbook. So it's still connecting visual art with music. So they're not separate in my view, I guess, if that answers your question.
2 more questions. You worked on Space Jam.
Yeah.
Did you ever meet Michael?
The strange thing about Space Jam is that's all anybody ever wants to know is whether we met Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan, in the building that we were in, which was actually in Sherman Oaks, we were nowhere near the Warner Brothers lot, and we were processing all of the live action footage that had been filmed on the basketball court that they set up, the green screen they did. So all of that stuff with Space Jam, the live action, and with Roger Rabbit, the live action, it was all done by the time I got involved, because the animation is added into the live action plates. So we had like a sign on the wall with Michael Jordan's autograph going, "Hey, like, you guys are doing a great job," but we never met the guy, so yeah.
Okay. A final question is, when you think about the time that you want to spend in Costa Rica?
Well, really meeting the students at Veritas. I mean, the work I do in teaching, there are 2 principles that underpin everything I do. The first one is, when I'm teaching, my job is to sharing information, like stuff I wish somebody had told me. Because when I was a student in the 1980s in Scotland, there were no animation studios, there were really no animators, there's a couple of people doing stuff, but it wasn't like at the Disney level, and it didn't seem like a career trajectory. So the other thing is that thing of time travel. Is like when I am working with students, in my head I'm going back, punching a hole through the fabric of time, and I go back and I meet my younger self and I get to share information with all these people, knowing that if you're in Costa Rica, you kind of think, I was born in the wrong place. You know, I should have been born in California, or I should have been born in Tokyo, and then I could work for Miyazaki, or then I could work for Disney. And I had the same feeling growing up in Scotland. It was like I was just in the wrong place. Because I know how that feels, and because I know it doesn't matter, I have the opportunity to let students know that wherever they were born, they still represent the next chapter of what's going to be written as the history of animation. And when I teach history of animation, I'm always keen to make sure that they know that we're looking at a living thing. History of animation is a living story. It's not dead people. It's not learning the dates of like when the Fleischer brothers got the patent for rotoscoping, or when the multiplane camera was built, or when Toy Story came out. The important thing is that the young people, Chema, all the other students from Veritas, they represent the next chapter of animation in this corner of the world. And if we can help them learn the business and the distribution and the exhibition and the marketing, as well as the art side and the technical side, then they won't only be playing to a Latin American audience, their work will be seen globally. That matters. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
You're very welcome.
Congratulations on your amazing band.
Well, it's not really my band. I borrow either the Power Blues Trio, but it's always Javier Villaseñor and Los Vianos, which is his brother Abraham, and another Ivan who's a drummer, and Vic on bass, and tonight it's Jean-Pierre and Ivan on bass. So it's not really it's their band, and I just sneak in sometimes. So
It sounds scary.
good. Glad you enjoyed it. Thank you for coming.